Welcome to this episode of the Autism Annex podcast. I'm John Andrew Slominski. The spectacle that is a NASCAR race is unlike any other. There's incredible speed with cars pushing 200 miles per hour. There's the smell of burnt rubber and gasoline. There's the roar of engines and crowds and countless bright lights. And if you're thinking that some people with autism might find it a bit much, you're probably right. And yet, my guest today, Armani Williams, is the first openly autistic driver on the NASCAR circuit. He took to racing at an early age, and now that he's gotten some hard-won recognition in the auto racing world, he's using racing as a platform to elevate awareness and acceptance of autism. Armani Williams, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
How did you first become interested in racing?
Yeah, well, I gotta say, it all started at a very young age for me. I just grew up loving cars from the very start. Like, I would go to a store and get every collection of Hot Wheels or Matchbox cars I could get and just play racing with them when I got back home. And then I remember I got this one gift. I think it was for my birthday or Christmas. And it was a die-cast car of a Kurt Busch number 97 Superman car. And that's when I started hearing about NASCAR. And I'm like, oh, wow, this sounds interesting. I want to check this out. And the first race I ever watched on TV, as soon as I saw it, I was just hooked right from the very start. And I would just watch NASCAR races every single weekend. And it came to the point where I transitioned from loving cars to then loving racing. And by the time I was about 8 years old, I told my dad that, hey, this is something that I want to do. I want to do what those guys are doing on TV. I want to be a professional race car driver. And so that's where everything kind of kickstarted from there as far as my racing career. Like a lot of drivers these days, I started racing go-karts. Then I moved up into what are called mini cup cars, which is like kind of a half small version of a stock car. And had tremendous success winning a lot of races. And then I moved up into what was then called the Arca Truck Pro Series, which is a regional series, before I was invited to one of NASCAR's programs called the NASCAR Driver Diversity Program to give minority drivers like me an opportunity to continue to move up the ladder as far as my racing career is concerned. NASCAR saw that there was potential in me and allowed me to move up to NASCAR. But they wanted me to try and start off racing in a NASCAR series that they had up in Canada called the NASCAR Pinty Series. And it really taught me a lot about just how to be a professional race car driver, the things you have to do to prepare for every race weekend, whether that's on the track or off the track, and that you really have to bring your A game every single time. So it's definitely been a long journey and everything that I've ever wanted to do in my life.
So as a kid, you had the Hot Wheels cars and the die-cast cars, which a lot of us did as kids, but you took another step. You got into watching NASCAR, and then eventually you get to sit behind the wheel for the first time. What was that like?
I mean, that's a good question. It was basically racing in go-karts. Like those carts were pretty small. Like they had a good amount of power in it, but like they very, very maneuverable, so it really taught you a lot about just how to have good car control and just how to hit your marks perfectly, because like one small move and you could get your go-kart ending up off the road into the grass and possibly wrecked. And so that was probably, say, the first ever vehicle I drove as far as racing concerned. And so it was a lot of fun to race those back in the day.
You've driven all sorts of high-performance vehicles at this point. Are there any cars that have really stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say just recently when I've raced in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the cars that they got, it was kind of their own version of NASCAR's Car Tomorrow, which, they debuted that for the Cup Series many years ago. And so they still race those cars today. And, the aerodynamics of it, because of its boxy shape, it makes those cars very good aerodynamically, so it's very challenging to drive. Like you can pretty much slide a car through the corners, and it really requires you to have great car control and have a lot of finesse. So it was awesome.
As you know, learning to drive represents not only a milestone, but it can be an unachievable goal for some people on the autism spectrum. And here you are, as we mentioned at the top of this show, the first openly autistic NASCAR driver. What does it mean to you to have smashed that barrier and now to be able to share that story with the world?
It means a lot to me, understanding the challenges that comes with autism and knowing that I wasn't going to let the downsides of autism back me down to what I wanted to do in life. I didn't want it to have it affect me whatsoever. And I just had to continue to believe in myself and stay encouraged and just understand that life is always full of challenges. And I think with autism, it's no different. It's just a matter of how you're going to overcome the adversities that autism can provide and be able to take the strengths of autism and turn it into something special. And so I would say from everything I've had to have gone through and where I am now, it goes to show that there's nothing impossible with autism. That whatever dream you have, as long as you put your heart and soul to it and never let autism back you down, that anything's possible for you to be successful at something and to be able to contribute to society like anything else. So it definitely means a lot to me to know that anything's possible with autism.
It's a great message, and it's interesting the way you frame this idea of not just overcoming adversity, but actually tapping into the strengths of autism. It reminds me of Temple Grandin, who talks about being a visual thinker and how that's been a major strength for her in designing machinery for the livestock industry. Do you feel like autism benefits you as a racer?
Yes, it does. I believe a lot of people like me with autism, whatever catches our interest, we put 100% ultra focus on it on all times because it's something that we love. It's something that we want to be involved in. And so for me, when it comes to racing, I've always been laser like focused on anything that happens with racing. And even when I get into a race car, knowing that at the speeds that I'm going to be running out there, that I got to have high level of concentration at all times at every single lap because things are going to be moving so fast. You got to be prepared for what might happen ahead, what might happen around you, and things like that. And so I would say just the high level of concentration, that laser like focus on the things that you love to do in life, the things that you enjoy so much more than anything else. I believe is a strength to what we have with autism.
You mentioned the importance of preparation, and in addition to your laser like focus, I'm wondering what else you do behind the scenes to make sure you're ready for race day.
Just like any athlete in sports, you got to make sure you're in great shape. Like take the time to exercise, make sure you gain some strength in you to where nothing in a 3,400 pound race car is going to like wear you out by the end of the race. And then I would say from a mental aspect, we as race car drivers are very fortunate, especially for somebody like me, can use a resource like iRacing and these built-in simulators where you have a steering wheel, a stick shift, and pedals to where, it's not like these video game consoles where you have a controller. Like this is kind of like what you expect when you're driving a car. And you can be able to practice for hours and days on real life tracks and real life cars just to give yourself a baseline on how to get around certain tracks and how to drive certain cars, the things you got to do. So got to put a lot of time and effort into that so that when you go to do the real thing in the race, you already know what to do and you already know what to expect. And so all of those things requires a lot of laser like focus because you got to make sure you hit every mark just right.
You're obviously very outspoken when it comes to autism. What made you decide to be so open about your story?
I mean, I will say there is a lot of stigma and uncertainty when it comes to autism.
Right.
Like, unless you have someone, whether that's a friend or family, who's connected with autism and all that, like not a lot of people understand what autism really is. And so I think when it comes to being open with autism, I think it's important that at some point you break out of that shell and just let people know exactly who you are, like what you've been through in life and how you've gotten to this point. So, I mean, I don't think there's much difficulty in being so open, when talking about yourself, what happening with autism, as long as you're comfortable being yourself and your personality and all that. A lot of people just want to just have a better understanding of who you are, and if you give it to them, then they'll have a greater appreciation for who you are and everything that you try to do. So I don't think there's much difficulty with other drivers, because like people want to know your story. And, knowing that like having autism is a unique thing, given the challenges and what you built yourself to be. Everybody should be able to express who they are and be able to tell people about their story, including with autism.
What's your experience with neurodiversity and autism in terms of acceptance and understanding in the NASCAR community?
I will say, as far as the racing community, like at least from the NASCAR side, they've worked an awful lot to help diversify the sport. It is important that we include everybody in the sport. Like whether you're an African American, whether you're female, or whether you're, somebody like me who has like a disability like autism. Like we want to be able to share our love and passion for the sport, no matter what it is, in whatever type of occupation we do in racing, whether that's, being a pit crew, whether that's being an owner or a driver, or anything.
People who've seen you race notice that part of the graphic design on your car involves the puzzle piece, which has been a symbol for autism awareness and acceptance. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so Blue Brick Pediatrics is a high level ABA therapy company, and so we were able to connect with them, trying to look for sponsors that had connections to what I am about. With me being a race car driver, with also having autism and just being a part of racing, and so we've been fortunate to be able to run some races with them as a main sponsor for us. Especially in my truck days and then even Xfinity.
You mentioned ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis. Is that part of your story?
Yeah, that's part of my story as well, because like a lot of people with autism, I understand that I needed to get some certain help. Like being as a kid, I just wasn't sure what was so different about me, like things I was going through like in school, it just kind of felt odd and weird. And I wasn't sure why that was. And, because I'm just a kid trying to, live life like everybody else. And, yeah, I may be different, but, everybody's different, right? But like there was just sort of this disconnect. And so that's when my parents at one point in my life told me exactly what I felt like I needed to hear, at least early on. And so like I understood at that point what exactly I had, and just be able to connect the dots on what specific type of help I need. Because I was diagnosed with autism when I was 2 years old. And so there was no way for me to be able to remember it at the time, and I think they just wanted to let me grow up, let me mature a little bit, so that like if they did have to tell me that like, I'll be able to handle it better, be able to understand it better. But and thankfully I've had a great support system in my family who's always loved me and cared about me, and they too were trying to give me as much help as I needed. And given where I am today, I'm just very grateful for them.
You've had so much visible success, and you've also alluded to the fact that your path hasn't always been an easy one. You've said before that you were expected to be nonverbal and only began to really speak at around age 3. What were some of the major challenges that you remember facing as you were growing up?
I think mainly with autism, what you hear about a lot is that we do struggle with social interaction and communication issues. And so I think really that was kind of the main thing that I researched on with autism, and that's something that I really wanted to work on because in life, you're going to have to build relationships with any person that you meet, whether that's friends, whether that's, important people. And so I wanted to make sure that like my communication was clean and down and be able to socially interact with, other people that may not have autism. And then along with that, there was like repetitive behaviors as well. Like, sometimes we'll demonstrate certain behaviors that may kind of feel more different to a lot of people's eyes, but like really it was just the communication and social aspect. So, I talked with my parents and, they kind of taught me the basics of just, how do you introduce people and like, what things would you talk about with certain people, like, hey, if you meet a certain someone and you want to get to know them, like think about, what their interests are or what their hobbies are so that you can be able to connect with people even more because you share the same interests as them. And so like those are kind of one of the main things that I kind of hone on a lot throughout my life. And it's kind of made it more easier to be able to talk to people, talk about certain things, and just being able to make friends and relationships. That was the kind of help that I got in terms of like seeing what autism is about, and it's really helped me throughout my life.
What was your experience like in school?
Like even in school, like I would have certain assistants that would like, walk with me to every class just to make sure I was on top of everything, and
Sure.
make sure I understood like, what the teacher was asking for and things of that nature. And therefore like I could understand exactly what I needed to do. So I think like further along, I realized, like something in my brain was probably different than what other kids' brain was, and so like I I think like it kind of helped again that at least my parents were able to tell me of what I really had early on because it gave me more of a chance and opportunity to try and overcome that, before it was too late.
Speaking of school, you just graduated from college, which is huge. Congratulations.
Yeah, just this past December, which I mean, I'll tell you what, like that was a long, long time coming. Now, like I can move forward to the next chapter of my life into whatever I want to do. So, I mean, it was a proud moment for me and my entire family.
So, what does a professional race car driver study in college?
So, I studied in mechanical engineering. I like to be able to take that degree and like I kind of always thought like I wanted to always be involved in cars in some way, whether like it's me working on it, like tuning them up, fixing them up, or just working for like a car company, where we strive to put out the best performance vehicles as possible to sell to our consumers. And so I've always liked to take that engineering and just kind of expand my knowledge in terms of having a better understanding of how cars work and to be able to contribute to, helping make cars better, for the foreseeable future. So that's what I've been hoping to take with me with that degree.
As someone who's undoubtedly a role model for a lot of people out there, what's important to you and what do you want to stand for?
Well, I want to be someone that really stands for determination, a person that had all these challenges with autism, but he never gave up in striving in what he wanted to do. And I want to be able to share my story of like how I was able to persevere through to chase my dream and be able to live my dream and be a champion to those in the autism community to give them some hope, some light at the end of the tunnel that anything's possible with autism, and that, individuals, kids, families, they can be able to do the same. There is no deficiency with autism as long as you continue to believe in yourself, and whatever dream that you have in life is just why not go for it? go after it and chase it. And, never let anything stand in your way and just continue to work hard at whatever it's going to take to achieve your dream.
What does the next chapter look like for Armani Williams? Could you give us a little preview?
I mean, there's definitely going to be a different chapter in my life. This is a point in my life where, I have to come out of my own shell and, be able to live independently and to continue to do what I'm doing. Hopefully it builds up to a point where you'll be able to see me racing on a week-to-week basis, out there being competitive and having the opportunity to win races, because that's what we as race car drivers strive for. And so I'm trying to strive for the same thing, So for me, it's just me continue to work and grind as far as building up what my life is going to be all by myself. And so there's definitely a chance you're going to see me at more races in the near future in 2025.
And I wouldn't be surprised if some Autism Annex podcast listeners are also some of your newest fans. We're excited to see what's next for you, and I wish you lots of success.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
You've been listening to my conversation with Armani Williams, professional stock car racer and the first openly autistic NASCAR driver. To follow his racing career and to learn more about his work on and off the track in elevating autism awareness and acceptance, find him on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or visit teamarmaniracing.com. The Autism Annex podcast was developed by Star Autism Support. I'm John Andrew Slominski. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take good care of yourself and one another.